Hello, boys and girls and children of all ages. This is probably going to be more or less a personal blog with some solutions to a degree. And the main purpose of this, and I'm doing this for pops, the old man, the one percenter, Mike, one of my close dear friends, one of the few people that um reminds me of my mom. And there's very few people that actually remind me of my mom. He has a similar work ethic that my mother employed, and what's slightly amusing, he's exactly 366 days older than my mother. Exactly. He was born 1 year and 1 day before my mother, so he's always a nice guy, and that's why I'm wearing the Exile Cycle shirt for him. He absolutely hates that type of. He loved Bobbert style. He loves the style that Russ Mitchell does, but he hates the price tag. My friend is a one percenter, an old crippled, a COB, crippled old biker. So he always is on me about solutions. You constantly go into the problems, Charles. What exactly is the solutions? Me and him, where we work, are probably the only. There's only three of us in that place that are either members of unions and still support unions, or have any understanding of unions where we currently work. He's basically a mechanic, worked at Pontiac Motors in the foundry for 20, 30 years. I forget how long, and has worked, unfortunately, where he's currently employed for almost 20 years. He's still 70 years old, and he's still working for a multitude of reasons. Sometimes I wish he wouldn't, but he does. And he still has the same work ethic he had in the 1950s. So he's always on me about solutions. So I guess I will try to do some solutions, and here goes. Fundamentally, I think we are having or are caught in a liquidity trap. And how this needs to be addressed is the create demand. And the only way I can feasibly think of is creating demand is some means of debt elimination or debt forgiveness. I've always been a supporter of a great jubilee, and there's very few people out there supporting debt jubilee. Some of the neo-Keynesians that I support, like Stephen King and Michael Hudson, Mike Whitney. Krugman probably supports it, but he won't put it in the New York Times, it seems. But most of the neo-Keynesians are supporting some form of debt jubilee. And this is the problem we are currently facing is a problem as old as the hills, and it's basically compound interest. Eventually, under the system of economics and banking system that we currently have, the way compound interest works and interest payments work and debt works, eventually it outstrips the value of the material that it was once based upon. And that is sort of where we at. And the only reason we had created demands beginning in 72 was via some debt, allowing a massive amount of credit and debt for the middle class in order to maintain their lifestyle. So we have to address that by some means of debt jubilee. What I've always supported personally is some form of Wall Street sales tax, Tobin tax, or whatever you want to name it. The purpose of this is to garner a massive amount of revenue on every individual stock transaction, including those high-frequency trades that are done by the little computers in Goldman Sachs' basement. Every single one of that, you put a nice little 1 cent tax on every single trade that's ever done on Wall Street, and it will collect a massive amount of revenue. The purpose of this, it does two things. Hopefully, it stops rampant speculation. Hopefully it does. Slows it down. Slows down the rampant speculation that has infected our economy as far as Wall Street is concerned, or the FIRE economy, finance, insurance, and real estate. We've created an asset inflationary economy. That's the only growth we have created, and that's the whole purpose of QE3 and that, and a combination of extreme austerity as a way of crippling the working class. So some kind of Tobin tax, and with the revenue that you will gain from the Tobin tax, I fully support straight out government purchasing of student loans. That would, I'm personally biased on that. That would help me bail me out, and it also would bail out the whole generation that's coming up, the tail end of Generation X and the beginning of Generation Y, or the millenniums. Help them start out there and start making a go of life so they can get out of their mom's basement and go out there and make babies, buy cars, buy a refrigerator, and buy houses. And hopefully that will stir up some demand. That is one way of doing it. Also, I've always been a supporter of allowing the Fed, via the back window, allowing municipalities to get loans from the Fed at 0% interest rates. Allow municipalities and states the same buying privileges at the Fed back windows that a lot of companies got during the bailout. A lot of the big Goldman Sachs, AIG, and those companies, and allow state municipalities the same buying rights at the Fed's window at 0% interest rates for make work jobs, basically, or infrastructure jobs, a means of actually going out there, rebuilding bridges, roads, dams, dikes, levees, rebuild the electrical grid, rebuild a whole giant Wi-Fi for everybody. But that would serve two purposes. It would get people out there, get money circulating, and get some velocity in the money's chain, which is unfortunately not going anywhere. It's pretty stagnant. Most of what's happening, money's pretty much trapped in individual hands. So you got what, $2 trillion now that's sitting on the sideline? You're going to have to force that back into the market somehow. The most effective means of doing that is some form of taxation, which I doubt very seriously would be supported. I think the first two ideas I could probably get through the current political structure of this country. There's no way we would force the $2 trillion sitting on the sidelines back into the economy via extreme tax rates at this moment, because we're not there yet. But we need to do something to force it back into the marketplace, because that's too much money sitting on the sidelines. So you need some kind of debt relief, massive debt relief. You got $1.2 trillion of student loans that, hey, hopefully with a Tobin tax we could get rid of most of that. That would be a massive injection of vibrant activity into our society. Maybe a MakeWorks program allowing the municipalities and the states access to the Fed's discount window would maybe start them back on a massive infrastructure binge that would start putting people back to work. Also, long term, long term, which is what I wanted to address maybe on a blog, is where we as a society should be going. Because me and Mike talk about it a lot. He talks about being at Pontiac Motors. This is where he worked in the foundry. And every year, it was 1 million cars going out of that place, almost. Every year, in and out. Eventually, that is not healthy for our society. You cannot have that much level of development or consumption, because eventually you're going to do massive damage. But we as a society have not ready to address that yet. We just are not. So until then, as far as a way of increasing middle class jobs domestically, I have always supported some form of tariff system in which the greater amount of the product that is made domestically, the less the tariff is. And the purpose of this is to raise import costs so astronomical that they cannot make out by offshoring jobs. That it would be simple just to produce a microwave or oven or refrigerator or plasma television in Arkansas than it would be to chart it over here from Thailand, China, or Singapore, wherever it's coming from. So you would have some kind of reverse tariff system that would give a break for domestic manufacturing while leveling a huge tariff or tax which would raise the cost of the product to the point that it would be cheaper to buy the domestic manufactured good. So that might go through, but I doubt very seriously, because large-scale retailers, especially the big chain and box stores, are highly dependent upon the Chinese labor. That's where it is headed. And we need to basically shame companies out too, because Apple could build its iPhone in Texas like Samsung is doing. It's basically going to cost $1 million more, $1 more per product, but when you factor that over how many units they produce, and that's basically 400 to 500 billion, 400 to 500 million dollars off their bottom line. And currently, the way corporate structures are set up, they have to maximize shareholder value and maximize profit return and of the individual. So it makes no sense for Apple to manufacture in Texas like Samsung. It just doesn't. But maybe with some form of tariff tax, they would be more willing to manufacture domestically. And then we as a society need to sit down and have a long conversation about how we should be governing ourselves and structuring work and moving forward in society. Because what we are currently doing is not working. It's working for a large, small number of people, the 1%. It's very successful for them, and the top 20% are doing okay in comparison to their counterparts in other parts of the world. But the rest of the population, they are living paycheck to paycheck and barely surviving. And Americans are becoming exceedingly nasty to one another and very individual, very selfish. America has a huge nasty streak that's vicious. If you actually look into the history of American society, a lot of writers throughout the history have written about America's vicious streak. Probably because there's way too many Scott Irish in this place. But that's my own little opinion about it. Thanks for listening to me. I'm curious about any of the ideas I just floated, whether anybody likes them or agrees with them or has anything to propose besides that, or any altering of those ideas. But those are just off the top of my head real quick. And this is mainly just a thank you blog to individuals who've been listening to me faithfully, like my friend Mike, like my little brother Frederick, like Justin, and one or two other people that are listening to me that I don't know who they are. Thank you very much. And oh yeah, do some cross promotion for my friend Frederick. We're going to be doing another episode of Comic Book Guys reviews, blatantly obviously comic books. We're going to be talking about that little angry right-wing Scottish guy who ripped off Fight Club. If you can guess what book I'm referring to, you win a pony. Thank you very much. Like, favorite, subscribe. Thank you. Have a good day.